Have you ever realized that Jesus laughed? Maybe you've never thought about it, but Jesus laughed. When you think of Jesus, you usually don't think of the words fun or funny. But look at Mark 12:37. It says, the large crowd listened to him, Jesus, with delight. People love listening to Jesus. It was exciting to listen to the Son of God. And when a non-Christian thinks of church, what do they usually think of? Boring. Why would I go to church? Man, it's so boring. But church should be something you enjoy, not something you endure. Church should be the most enjoyable, the most fun, the most meaningful, the most challenging, the most life-changing place there is. Folks, it's not a funeral service, it's a celebration service because Christ is alive.
Yes, come on. Yes.
It's just my personal bias that church ought to be fun. But it also ought to be challenging and life-changing. Everyone loved listening to Jesus, except for the stuffy and pompous religious leaders. And Jesus used a lot of humor in his messages. We just don't recognize it because it's not our kind of humor. You know, when we read it, we don't really get the jokes because Hebrew humor was different from our humor. Scholar Elton Trueblood has a book called The Humor of Jesus, and he points out that Jesus used humor all through his preaching. Hebrew humor in that day was humor by exaggeration, and that's not our kind of humor, so we don't get the jokes. Jesus would say, when you judge others, it's like you're trying to take a speck of sawdust out of their eye when you got a 2x4 in your eye. Ha ha! Jesus, that's hilarious. I mean, they'd be cracking up. It was humor by exaggeration. Jesus would say, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven. Jesus, cut it out. You're killing me with these jokes. I mean, people would be belly laughing, but we don't get it because it's not our kind of humor. But that Hebrew humor in that day was humor by exaggeration. And if you read scripture, you see that Jesus had so much humor in his messages because he knew laughter was such an important part of life. He created laughter. The Son of God laughed. He didn't shoot hoops with them, but he laughed with his disciples. He laughed with the children. Just imagine the sound of the Son of God laughing. Ever thought about that? The God of joy laughs. Can you think of what that laugh must have been like? The joy. Here's a classic painting by Willis Wheatley called The Laughing Jesus. I love that because you hardly ever see a painting like that of Jesus. I like this one even better. Look at it. It's a picture of Jesus laughing with a child. He was God, and yet he never acted too important to laugh. And some of you are taking yourself too seriously. I mean, you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, and that's not your job. And you're thinking that what you're doing is so important. If you stop, the whole world is going to crash. And you're not the general manager of the universe. You can resign from that. The world's going to keep going on. A big problem with a lot of Christians today is they take themselves far too seriously, but they don't take God seriously enough. At Woodland Church, we don't take ourselves too seriously, but we take God very seriously, and we want to follow him with all of our hearts, but we can laugh at ourselves. It's not about being serious. It's about being spiritual, which has nothing to do with just being serious. Sometimes we need to be very serious, and other times we need to laugh like Jesus. In Luke 7:34,